Hello everyone. Once again I welcome all the students in our today's session. We have already started a chapter that is the name is crop production and management, and already we have seen so many things in our last two lectures, like what is mean by crop and what are the basic techniques we have to use to improve the crop yield. That is our main motto while we are studying this chapter. And we have lastly we have ended on addition or adding the fertilizers or manure, what is mean by fertilizers, what is manures. So now let's go through this activity 1.2 that is remaining, and we have to start from this activity 1.2. Actually what is happening in this activity and what we have to do in this activity, we have to just check out whether there is a necessary of adding the manure or adding the fertilizers, or there is no need to adding this kind of the fertilizers. So what is actually we have to do, we are just taking 3 glasses or 3 cups in this activity, and we will give the name ABC, okay, and in that we will add small amount of the soil is there, normal soil, and then we will add seeds of moong or gram germinating to germinate them, okay, and we will add some soil into that. And then in cup A we will add a little amount of the soil mixed with a little cow dung or cow dung manure, because actually manure is nothing but the cow dung. It is made with the help of the cow dung only. So in cup A we will add little bit cow dung because it will be act as a manure only. In glass B we will take the same amount of the soil but mix with the urea. Urea is a artificial fertilizer, actually it is a fertilizer made in factories. So we will add in second cup, we will add the fertilizers, and in cup C we will take some amount of the soil and we will not adding anything. Without adding anything we will just put the soil and we will sow the seeds. So what will happen, now pour the same amount of the water in each glass, we have to watering, and then the seedling will be grow, and we will allow them for 7 to 10 days and observe their growth. This the picture is already showing. This kids are doing, they are adding the soil, they are adding the seeds into the glasses. So this is called the preparation of the experiment, how you can prepare the experiment. In 3 cup you have added a soil, you have added the seeds, and you have to keep for 7 to 8 days. And then what will happen, this is the next image, and actually this is the result, a growing seedling with manure and fertilizers. So what result you will observe here, it will ask did all the plants in all the glasses grow at the same pace. Means what, we have to observe what happened actually. In cup A we have added a little amount of cow dung, so that is why the growth you will observe, there is little amount of the growth is there, some seedlings are growing there. In cup B what we have done, we have added urea, that is a fertilizer, that is why we are having a more growth into the cup B. But in cup C we have nothing added, any addition we not added, we have just added the soil into that. So there is a little bit or the less, means if you compare the all ABC, so the lowest growth you will observe in cup C. So what is actually the aim or what we have to understand from this activity, that we have to understand, while you are using the manures there will be the growth, but there will be the less growth as compared to without adding anything. And while we are adding artificial fertilizers, that is urea, NPK, so that will give you more and more growth. So that is the aim why the farmers are adding the fertilizers, and especially they are adding the fertilizers, they are not using the manures, because the fertilizers will give more boosting power to our crops, and our crops will be grow in a high speed. So that is the means motto of our activity, to understand the students the importance of the fertilizers. So what showed better growth, so definitely the cup B which is having the urea, it will give you a more and more growth. So in such glasses was growth first. Now we will start the fertilizers and chemical substances which are rich in a particular nutrients. Fertilizers and manures both are rich in a nutrients that is required by our soil, that is required by our plant for our crops. So how these are different from manures? Now what is the basic difference between the fertilizers and manure we have to see here. For example of the fertilizers are, these are the example of the fertilizers: urea, ammonia and sulfate. These are the example of the fertilizers, that is in shortcut you can say the NPK fertilizers. The use of the fertilizers has helped the farmers to get the better yield, and that is the reason why why the farmers are adding the fertilizers after sowing the seeds, like wheat and paddy and maize, whatever kind of the crops we are having, we have to add the fertilizers, because it will fulfill the requirement which is not fulfilled by our soil. Means most of the times we are seeing there is a deficiency of the nutrients in the soil, so that is why we have to give the something supplementary nutrient to that our crop. So but excessive, and what will happen if you are giving the excessive fertilizers or excessive manures? So fertilizers are the actually chemicals. So fertilizers have also become a source of the water pollution. Now what are the disadvantages? Means anything if you are using, and that was or that is a chemical, so if you are using more and more time, so that will give you some kind of the side effect you can say. So number one side effect with our fertilizers, you can say that the fertilizers have the source of water pollution. Number one, it will pollute our water, because when we are adding the fertilizers, and some amount will be absorbed by the soil, but remaining amount will wash out with the water, whatever the watering we are doing for the plants, and that chemicals will be added into that water, and remaining water will be move, and that will meet into the some our water bodies like rivers and dams, so that will pollute our water. So that is why number one, the water pollution will be there. So therefore, in order to maintain the fertility of the soil, we have to substitute the fertilizers by organic manure. Now there are several kinds of the disadvantages. Water pollution will be there, our soil's fertility will be decreased if you are using more and more times that chemicals, that is the fertilizers. So definitely there is a need to find out something alternative. And now what is the alternative for the fertilizers? That is manure, or the leave the field uncultivated, you can add the manures, or either you can leave the field uncultivated, means fallow in between the two crops. Means what is mean by uncultivated? We are not growing anything. Means while example you have grown the one crop of the wheat, after that you have to allow the field for resting. You have to keep it without using anything. We are not grow anything in that field, so we will allowing the field to become fertile, because if you are not growing anything, so the field will be naturally build up the nutrients which is lost by our first crop. So that is why between two crops you have to give the break, you can say, for uncultivated, and fallow you have to do, or otherwise you have to do the manuring, you have to add the manures, because manures is a natural fertilizers. So these are both are the option for to avoid the fertilizers. The use of the manures improve the soil texture as well as its water retaining capacity, and replenishes the soil with all nutrients. So if you are going for manures, that is actually made by the cow dung, and that is a natural fertilizers, so what are the advantages we will get? Definitely we will having the nutrients in it, and again in addition it will improve the texture of the soil as well as water retaining capacity. Water holding capacity will be increased, your soil's texture will be increased, and whatever the soil profile, actually we have already seen in our lower classes, the soil profile will be whatever having the problems, that will be rebuilt with manure. So that are the advantages of using the manures and avoiding the fertilizers. So now any other method of replenish the soil with the nutrients is through the crop rotation. Other advantage, or other you can do the alternative, you can say we can do the rotation of the crop. Means we don't have to grow the same crop one after one batch. Means wheat you are growing, and next time also you are growing the wheat, and all the times you are growing the wheat into the same piece of the land, so that will decrease the fertility of the soil. So if you don't have the time to allow the soil for uncultivated, or otherwise you don't have the manures or fertilizers, so you can do the things, you can be do the rotation of the crops. Means you have to change the crops. Means first of all you have to grow a wheat, then you have to go for some other crops. So this can be done by the growing the different crops alternatively, And earlier the farmers in the northern India used to grow the legumes as a fooder in one season. What they are doing means, if they are growing a wheat, in the next season they are growing the legumes plant, means the plants which are having the legumes like the peas, we can also say the grams. So like this plant if you are growing, so that are the legumes, and they can be increase the whatever the nitrogen is lost from our fertilizers, that can be rebuilt, because these are the replenishment of the nitrogen will be happen, because these plants having rhizobium bacter, these legumes means the root nodules, they are having the root nodules, and they are the bacteria called the rhizobium bacteria, that will be grow into this root nodules of the plant. Actually this is the example of the symbiotic relationship between the rhizobium bacter and that plant, because rhizobium bacter will help the plant to fix the nitrogen, because this is one of the main thing. The nitrogen is present 78% around in our atmosphere, but plant and animal, we cannot able to take the nitrogen directly from the air, and that is why we need something alternative. The plant having the alternative of this rhizobium bacter, especially the leguminous plant. So leguminous plant will give the shelter and food to this rhizobium bacter, or otherwise blue green algae, and this rhizobium bacter will fixes the nitrogen from atmospheric nitrogen and fixes into the usable or soluble form of the nitrogen that will be in the soil, and with the help of the water, while it is taking the water, the plant will get the nitrogen. So these both will help to each other. So that is why we have the ancient people also, they are they are rotating the crops, means first time they are they are growing some kind of the wheat or some other plant, then they will alternatively they are using the, or they are growing the legumes plant crops. So that is why we can also enrich our nitrogen level in the soil, that is the reason. So in the previous classes also you have seen about the rhizobium bacter, and that is present in the nodules of the roots in the leguminous plants, and their atmospheric nitrogen. This is already I have told you right now. So this is the reason, and these are the methods we can be improve, or we can be improve the whatever the loss of the nitrogen or other nutrients from our land or soil. So either we can be go for the using the nitrogen, or using some our fertilizers, or otherwise manures, or otherwise you can be allow the soil uncultivated, or the finally you can also at least you have to rotate the crop. So when you are rotating the crop, you can be helping the enrichment of the soil nutrients. So now on the next page there is one comparison graph, or in the box we can compare what are the difference between fertilizers and manure. So if you understand this all the points, you will better understand what is fertilizers and what is manure, and which is good and which is bad, and which differences are there between these two things. So number one, we will see the fertilizers. Fertilizers is an inorganic salts. Actually they are made in companies, made in factories, that is why they are inorganic salts. And in other hand, manures is a natural substances that are obtained by the decomposition of cattle dung and human waste and plant residues. So this all will come from the natural substances, cow dung, remains of the plant, remains or waste of the plant and animal, or plants residues. So it will made by this all the natural things, that is why we can say this is a natural, and the fertilizers is artificial or man-made. The second point, fertilizers is prepared in the factories, and manures can be prepared in the field. Always whenever we are visiting to the some fields, so we can see in a separate area, or we can say the pits, or in that pits the farmers is collecting all the cow dung, all the waste materials, all the remains of the food plant, or all the remains of plant and animal, and they are adding into that pits, and that is will be become a manure. So that is why it can be prepared in the field. The third difference you can understand, a fertilizers does not provide any humus to the soil. Fertilizers, definitely fertilizers are good, they are increasing the growth rate of our crop, they will improve the yield of our crop, but whenever we are talking about the humus layer, that will be not having any advantage for the humus layer with the help of the fertilizers, So that is that the fertilizers do not provide any kind of the humus to the soil, and when we are talking about the manure provide a lot of humus to the soil. That is the basic advantage, because humus is also very important for our crops. The soil having more humus layer, the soil is very good for the plants. So the humus, this is the additional advantage of our manure. So it is providing extra nutrients to the plant, and again it is helping to the fixing the humus layer of the soil. Now the number 4 point, fertilizers are very rich in plant nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. The plant nutrients means our plants are required this kind of the nutrients, that is called the nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. So our fertilizers are very rich in this kind of the nutrients. And then we are talking about the manure is relatively less rich in plant manure. If you compare with manures and fertilizers, so the manures is relatively less rich in plant nutrients. So that is a disadvantage, or that is you can say the comparison. So some good points also there with the manures. So these 4 points basic differences you have to keep in your mind, and you can compare which is good and which is bad. So this table 1.1 gives the differences between the fertilizers and manure. Now we will say the advantage of the manure. If some person or some farmers are using the manures, they are avoiding the fertilizers, so what are the advantages he will get? So number 1 advantage what he will get, first of all, the advantage he will get, the organic manure is considered better than the fertilizer. This is because, why it is considered manures is better than fertilizers? So it enhances the water holding capacity of the soil, right? Why we are telling this is good for us? Water holding capacity is a very important characteristics, very important characteristics of the soil. If the soil having the capacity to hold the more and more water, so it will avoid the loosening or loss of the water. That is why it is a good characteristic. So if you are using the manures, it will increase or enhance the water holding capacity of your soil. Number 2nd point, it makes the soil porous, due to which exchange of the gases becomes easily. If you are adding the more manures, it will make the soil porous, means there is a gap or there is a holes into the soil. So from there the air will be circulate into the soil, and where the air will be circulate, they are having the more advantages, means exchange of the gases becomes easily. The roots will have the air, and leguminous plant will have the more air to convert the nitrogen and to fix the nitrogen. So these are the advantages if you are using the manure. Okay, now the 3rd point, it increases the number of friendly microbes. If you are using the manures, it is also having the microbes into that, and number of friendly microbes can be increased by the using of the manures. Mean like if you are using the vermicompost, so worms are there, and worms are the friend of our farmer, means it is moving into the soil and it is making the aerations more in the soil, and it is also advantage for our soil. And microorganisms can be decomposed, whatever the plant and animal products are there in the field, so it will also enrich the soil nutrients. And the next point is improve the texture of the soil. Now it is mean by the texture, which whatever the texture, the profile, it will increase by the using of our manure. So these are the advantages over the fertilizers. That is why we have to use the manure and we have to avoid the fertilizers, because manures definitely give you more and more yield in a shorter time. But when you are looking the other advantages like water holding capacity and soil profile, so I will suggest, and that is a better to use the manure only. Okay, now the next point is irrigation. What is mean by the irrigation? Providing the water to our crops, means the providing the water is a very essential thing for our crop. If you are not providing the water in a good quantity or in a good intervals, the plant, we will lose the plant, we will lose the good growth of the plant. So that is why irrigation is a very important thing for the living, for to be need for the leaf, the plant, or for improve the proper growth and development of the flower, fruit and seeds of the plant. Whatever the things will be coming to the plant, so this is the main requirement to provide the water. So that is why they are having the good growth of the plant, good seeds and good fruits and flowers. So along with the water, the minerals and fertilizers are also absorbed. While the plant roots or plant are absorbing the water, it's not only absorbing the water, with the help of the water, the plants also absorb the minerals, fertilizers, and they will absorb. The plant contains nearly 90% of the water. In the plant's body, 90% water is there, so that is why it needs more essential quantity of the water. And water is essential because germination of the seeds does not take place under the dry condition. If you are putting the seeds or if you are sowing the seeds into the soil and if you are not watering to that soil, so lack of the water will not allowing the seeds to germinate. So that is why we have to allow the water, and we have to provide the water in a right quantity and right intervals, and it will also give the nutrition dissolve in the water, get transported, whatever the nutritions are there, so that will dissolve with the water and that will be transport from the roots to the plant. So that are the advantages to providing the water. And each part of the plant, water also protects the crop from both frost and hot air currents. If you are providing the proper amount of the water in the field, so it will also maintain the temperature, maintain the hot air in that area, and maintain the moisture of the soil and healthy crop growth. If the moisture is there in a right quantity, so our crop will be grow in a proper way. So that is a very important to provide the water, and field have to be watered regularly as per the whatever the kind of the crop we are growing, as per the needs of the crop we have to provide the water. Okay, so the supply of the water to crop at different intervals is called the irrigation. Intervals is also very important. If you are providing more water, that is also not good for the plants. So while you are providing the water in a proper intervals, so that is called the irrigation. Providing the water is called the irrigation. And frequently of the irrigation frequency vary from crop to crop. Just I told you, soil to soil. If the soil, some soil having more water, more moisture, so there is no need to provide more and more water. And if the some soil having very dryness is more, if the area is very dry, so soil having less moisture, in that area the frequency will be more. You have to provide the water more and more times. So that is depend on a area, or that is depend on the crop. If you are taking the advantage of the paddy, if you are taking the advantage of the sugar cane, so it will take the more water. So that is why it is depend on the crop as well as the variety or the quality of the soil. This both will be depends. So in summer, or if you are growing your crop in the summer, so frequently of the watering is higher, right? Because in summer there is more temperature, more water evaporate from the soil. So that is why we have to provide the water more and more times in a summer area or in summer seasons. So why it is so? Because could it be due to the increased rate of the evaporation? Just I told you, the more evaporations of the water from the soil and the leaves, because leaves also evaporate the water. So that is why we have to do the irrigation or more frequency in the summer season. Now there is one more question. I am very careful. So this year we have to watering the plants. This person is telling we have to water the plant very carefully in the summers, because in the summers the evaporation rate will be higher from the soil and from plant both. So that is why you have to take care about the irrigation intervals. Now you have to provide the water, but what are the sources from where you can get the water to provide to your fields? So that is why we have to now discuss about what are the intervals you have to be keep in your minds. So number one, the sources of irrigation are from where we are getting the water. That already we know, we are getting the water from the wells, tube wells, ponds, lakes, rivers, dams and canal. These are, and the one more thing, rainwater. So these are the things from where we can get the water for our plants for irrigation. So in the next page you can see there are some traditional methods of the irrigations. Okay, whatever the things we are discussing before, because this irrigation or whatever the fields are growing of the crops that are not from 1 or 2 years, that is a very ancient people also have done this kind of the things. So that is why first of all we will discuss what are the traditional methods for irrigations. So the water available in the wells, lakes and canals, is lifted up by the different methods in the different regions for taking it to the field while we are traveling from one place to another place. So it is also depend from place to place. The techniques to take out or to bring the water up from the wells that are different. So cattle or human labor is used to for this method. So this method are cheaper but less efficient, right? Sometimes the human or the physically the people are bringing the water from the wells, and sometimes we are using some kind of the animals. The labor work will be done by them, but that is a disadvantage is that is very cheaper also. That is advantage, but disadvantage, it will take more time. It is very less amount of the water will be produced from this kind of the or this traditional method. So what are the different types of these traditional methods? Number one, moat, that is called pulley system, right? Number two, chain pump. Number third, Dekli and Rahat, that is lever system. So these are the four kind of the traditional methods. So in this picture, that picture A 1.4, you can observe or you can see the person is bringing the water with the help of that bag, and manually it is bringing the water up. That is called the moat, right? In the second picture you can see the chain pump, in the third picture you can see the Dekli, and in the fourth you can see the Rahat. So these are the four basic methods, you can say, that are the traditional methods. Ancient people are using this kind of the methods to bring out the water from their wells. You can see the zooming pictures of the chain pump, and this is for the Dekli, and this is for Rahat. Okay, so now one by one we will discuss in a short. As you see in the picture, that is a chain. The boxes are attached with the chain, and that is why with the help of the chain the water is coming out from the wells. And the second, you can see there is a one big stone is there, so that is why it is called the Dekli. With the help of the weight, the water will be lifted up from the well. So that is all the manual. There is no need of any kind of the electricity or nothing. Or in that number 4, that is called the Rahat. In that Rahat, you can see there are the boxes are attached with that wheel, and here in a several distance a bull is moving over there. So with the help of the energy of this bull, the movement of that boxes are there, and the water will be take out from that well, and it is provided to the feed. So these are both, or that 4 are all the traditional methods. So pumps are commonly used for lifting the water, but nowadays we are using the pumps. Before, the people are using this kind of the traditional methods, and that is why they cannot do the farming in a more and more areas, because if you are using this kind of the techniques, you will not able to bring the water in a more amounts. So if you are not having the water in a more amounts, you cannot cover the more land or more field in with the help of this techniques. So that is why the people have to we think about some traditional some new methods, and we have to avoid the traditional methods if you want to increase the yield of our crops. So we have to think new ideas, and we have to go through the new techniques, then only we can increase the crop yield. So we will stop here, and we will start in our next lecture what are the modern techniques to provide the water, or what are the modern techniques for the irrigations. Okay, so we will stop here, and we will start our in the next lecture we will see the remaining part. Okay, bye, take care.